Dieses Gaming-Video wird euch präsentiert von justnetwork.eu.
When will you provide more deck slots for players?
Oh, from 9. So, that comes up a lot. And, it's not that we are not paying attention to that request. But one thing we really want people to think about is how many decks do I actually actively play with? And I think, and maybe even for yourself, is to think about, hey, look, I want more than 9 deck slots, but then do I really play with more than 9 different decks at the same time? And the answer is often probably no. I know there are people out there who are super power users who are using 9 decks at the same time, and over 9 decks at the same time, and I understand, but I think they're really a subset, a minority. So to the people who don't have more than 9 active decks at the same time, I think it's really reasonable, I think, for people to think about, do I really need more deck slots, and what would it mean if I do? Because this isn't the best analogy, but the one I like to use is, I might be dating myself, but I grew up playing like King's Quest, right? And I would save obsessively. Like I would save like every 5 minutes because I might die or whatever. So I would play King's Quest, and by the end of the game, I have like 2,500 save files. And honestly, I only care about 2 of them. I care about, do I kiss the princess, do I not kiss this princess, right? And the latest save file, right? Those are like 2. But I can't even find them because I have like 2,500. And so the reason why I bring up that example is, let's say we were to give everybody like 100 deck slots. I think the real possibility is we're going to end up with a lot of, frankly, crap. And then you're going to now need a way to somehow separate the decks you don't care about from the decks you do care about. So that's another interface, and I think we're introducing a lot of complexity for possibly a use case that people don't actually have. So again, we're not making light of the fact that some people, people are feeling frustrated, some people want more deck slots, but I do think that maybe forcing yourself to delete some of those decks that you're not playing with is actually a good thing, perhaps. So it's something we're constantly looking at. Feedback's really important to us, so we're going to keep talking about this. It's something that the team passionately talks about all the time. But for now, we have no plans to increase the deck slots.
It may be very frustrating for a casual player if he draws one of the more fun legendaries like Nostormu out of a booster pack. Could it be a possibility to take these fun legendaries out of booster packs and offering different ways to get them?
Yeah, I think it's people are very different, and that's one thing that we're really focusing on as a team for Hearthstone, where we really want to make a game that embraces everybody and all game styles. So I do feel that the types of players who are perhaps a little more active on forums and things like that tend to be perhaps more on the competitive side of the spectrum. They're interested in power, they're interested in doing well, and I understand that for those players, sometimes getting arguably what's more fun and less powerful cards like Nostormu can be frustrating, because it's like, hey, I really want this one legendary that everybody says is the best legendary in the world. I get frustrated if I get any other legendary than those 3 legendaries, right? Like I understand that perspective, but then there are also perhaps a little more silent majority of players who love playing the game. This is their first collectible card game. They're not necessarily trying to make legendary this season, and they're excited to get exposed to a lot of like cards that push the boundary of what's possible. Cards like Nostormu is so exciting because we're asking ourselves, look, this is a CCG, but it's a digital CCG. What are some crazy things we can do that's not practical or possible, on paper? So, for those players, I think when they get Nostormu, I think it blows their minds, and it is an exciting experience. So, I think, when people feel viscerally, oh, I hate this card, I can't believe I got it, I think it's important to take a moment and think about, well, there are other types of players out there, and those players really do enjoy this card. So, those are the things that we try to balance when we set up the system.
Is there any chance that epic but more underwhelming cards like Kidnapper, Bestial Wrath, or Pitbull are buffed in the future?
Will be buffed in the future?
Yeah.
So our general philosophy is to try not to tamper with cards that are already in the system, because we don't want to solve the game for the players. It's really important to us that we give the players the tools to change the meta, the tools to make certain cards in the system better or worse by countering it or by complementing it. So we're really more interested in introducing new cards instead of actively buffing and nerfing cards. We would like to avoid that as much as possible. Even some of the cards you mentioned, I'm not going to say any of them specifically are going to be amazing in ranked play anytime soon, but I think it is important to remember that there are a lot of cards that people think were crap for the longest time, and then somebody comes up with a really cool new deck idea and it works wonderfully in that deck, and then people go as far as saying, oh, okay, now it's overpowered, you need to nerf it, right? So when we get to those situations, we'd rather give you then a card that can counter that situation and kind of keep that deck in check, instead of saying, oh, you came up with a cool idea, we're gonna nerf it, it's a do-over, and we really want to avoid that.
Do you have plans on how often you will release add-ons like Naxxramas?
Yeah, so Hearthstone's really been a learning experience for us. Naxxramas is included. It's been received incredibly well. I think a lot of the experiments we've been doing in terms of releasing the content on a week-by-week basis, it's been received really well, but there's, I think, also some weaknesses around it that we need to take a look at. So this is all to say, as we kind of get more data from our backend system and how players are behaving, as we get more feedback from the community, I think that's really going to help us understand what's the right pace. Because someone like me, I've been playing for years, so I have a certain amount of thirst for new content, and I want it quenched, and I want more cards all the time. But then we have to remember that perhaps majority of Hearthstone players haven't really started playing until this year when we officially released it. So for those players, especially players who are new to CCGs, they're just getting familiar with the game. They're like, wow, collectible card games are awesome. There's like over 300 cards in the base set. I'm really just starting to get used to it, and then bam, like there's hundreds more cards and hundreds more cards. I think that could be overwhelming and possibly destructive for the community. So we really have to kind of achieve that balance, and that's really why we did Naxxramas the way we did it. Is focus on 30 cards that are concentrated, that can meaningfully impact the meta, but not overwhelm new players. With that said, as we talked a little bit about this at the last BlizzCon, we are interested in also kind of not just doing adventures, but also introducing kind of a new set of cards. So our next expansion is actually going to be a new set of expansion card pack. So I think that's going to really kind of blow it up and introduce a lot of new cards to the system. But in terms of timing, it's really important to us to see, hey, what's going on with the new players, what's going on with the existing players, what's going on with returning players, and then find out by timing.
All right. Are there any plans on giving the possibility to record games so I can afterwards analyze them? Probably also out of the actually it's about the view of your opponent.
Yeah, that feature has come up a fair bit. It's not currently on our top tier list, but I think it's close up there. We're exploring a few different options for ways to do it. Like, I think a lot of times people mention StarCraft 2 and their replay system. Quite frankly, their replay system is incredible. It's amazing. But I also know, I've worked on StarCraft at one point in my life, where just I know how much work it is. And, again, it's really about, look, there's so many cool things we could be doing. Let's focus on the most impactful features. So features like Observer Mode, maybe things like bringing the new card expansion. Because, these are things that are super meaningful that I think will help everybody in the game right now, and will help kind of grow the community and make Hearthstone better for everybody. Replay mode currently, it's not hitting that cut. But, I think it's something that we're going to get to as we kind of get to some of the other more critical features we're going to get to, and then as more and more people kind of become more expert players and want that feature.
The new ability ability of the Warlock is considered as pretty strong, while its class cards may be a little bit weaker than compared to the other classes. With the release of Max Ramas, many strong neutral cards have been added to the game, so the weakness may not be as present as before. Decks like Super Handlock, Blue-Lock, and so on. Sometimes even Murloc, the Warlock is one of the most played classes for several months.
Sure.
Do you consider changing the ability or the durability of the Warlock?
You know, like we were saying, we are trying as much as we can to stay away from buffing or nerfing, because I think it's really easy to go down that path and try to just fix everything by change everything. And the problem with that is it really invalidates community's effort to come up with cool new ideas. It's like, oh, here's a great Warlock deck you made. You know, just kidding, you can't play it anymore because we've nerfed all your cards. With that said, you know, if we feel like something is really necessary, then you know we're not going to be you know, entrenched in that philosophy. But that's our overall guiding philosophy. So, you know, specifically for the Warlock hero ability, it's something that we are actively looking at. It's on our watch list, but currently we don't have plans to you know, actively change that. If I may add one more thing is, you know, Handlocks and Zulocks have been a very popular deck type in ranked, and we definitely recognize that. We do feel that cards we're introducing in Naxxramas will dramatically affect the meta of you know, hyper-aggressive Zulock decks that are out there. I think cards like Deathlord, cards that are more kind of aggressively countering the early aggressive rush decks. So, you know, I wonder maybe we chat again in a month from now, and we're gonna have a different conversation. You know, maybe we're gonna have a different conversation. You know, and we really want to kind of give that time for these cards to breathe. You know, before we make some radical decisions to start nerfing or nerfing cards.
So, are we done? Or
it's okay. You have
questions left. Blizzard has already released Diablo 3 for consoles, like Xbox One or PS4. Are there any plans for Hearthstone?
You know, our focus for Hearthstone is to come out on the Android tablet. We've talked about it before. We are targeting this year to get Hearthstone onto Android tablet. And we have a dedicated mobile team working on that, and they're making really good progress, and we're on track for this year. And we're also actively working on it is also really high priority for us to get the game out onto iPhones and Android handset. So to us, that's the priority. Console is not quite making that top list of things we're focused on.
Okay, and my last question, I know we've already talked a lot about nerfing and buffing, but are there any plans on nerfing Leroy Jenkins?
Yeah, so I mean, Leroy Jenkins, you know, being used a lot. I think it makes sense in an environment where I think there are a lot of aggressive decks that are dominant. You know, again, we will do everything we can to try to create a situation where we provide tools to the players to make a counter to decks that use Leroy to keep that in check. But you know, our designers have mentioned this in the past. It's definitely a card that's on our watch list. If we feel that it's absolutely necessary, then you know, we may action. But so far, you know, it's easy to have an emotional reaction to cards that that kills you. And you know, the fact is, Leroy Jenkins is a finisher, and very often you're gonna die to that card. You're gonna very rarely see the times that your opponent didn't play Leroy Jenkins and you won. You know, you don't even know he has a card in his hand, right? That happens a lot of times, but you don't even know that's happening, right? All you remember is, oh, that time, the spec that Leroy Jenkins I died, right? So we're looking at the stats very carefully. So that seems to be in order, but you know, at the same time, you know, Eric Dodds, our game director, would say this all the time. Like, we don't necessarily care about a game that's perfectly balanced data-wise if it doesn't feel balanced emotionally. So you know, we understand a good amount of our community has certain reaction against Leroy Jenkins. So look, we're gonna pay really careful attention to it. I think kind of making that type of deck maybe less dominant in the meta is gonna naturally take care of that perception. If it doesn't, then you know, it's something to think about.